Which brings us on to the major thrust of this particular presentation. Let's now consider different board architecture, different board structures. And the options are quite clear. You can have a board made up entirely of executive directors, one that has a majority of executives, one that has a majority of non-executives, or the ultimate, an all non-executive board, which many would consider a supervisory or two-tier board. Let's look around the world, and I want to share with you some right complex structures in practice. The all-executive board, using our model of the triangle and the circle, is one in which all the directors are executive directors. There are no outside or no non-executive directors. Quite typical in a startup company, directors are, often the shareholders as well, are all managers in the business. Also found quite frequently in subsidiary companies, companies that are owned by a holding company, where the major decisions are taken by the main board, which would have independent non-executive directors, and the subsidiary company board being, as in this case, all executive. Second case is one in which there are, in the diagram here, 5 executive directors and the 3 ends, 3 non-executive directors. A majority are executive. This was the case in most British companies until the 1970s, early 1980s. The argument was quite clear in the boardroom in Britain. Non-executives can help. They can make a contribution. They can give us insights which we wouldn't otherwise have. They can challenge the way we do things. They can challenge the assumptions that we have about our own company. Non-executives are useful. About a third is right. Used to be the conventional wisdom. Never as many as half. And that was the case in the 1970s, 1980s in England. It's now all changed. The latest data on the structure of companies listed on the London Stock Exchange show boards comprising a majority of non-executive directors. But still notice from the 1970s, 1980s, no real distinction between those non-executives who were independent and those who were connected. Just to give you an example of such a board in Hong Kong, here is a case put together using the triangle and circle model, put together by some of my students, of the board of Lee and Funk. And there you see the 2 brothers who are prominent in this company. And the board consists of chairman, managing director, and 4 executive directors, all in the management hierarchy. It has 3 non-executive, they are connected directors with some interest in the company, which raises the question of their independence, and 4 independent non-executive directors. One more, in fact, than is the requirement under the Hong Kong listing rules. It shows how the circle and triangle diagram can be used in practice and distinguishes independent directors from connected directors and from executive directors. It also shows the separation of chairman and chief executive. Which brings us to the final and obvious board structure in which all the directors are non-executive. This is often referred to as a 2-tier board in which the company is managed by an executive committee, sometimes called a management board, but the governance of the company is in the hands of a group of non-executives. This model has some parallels to the German supervisory board model. In the German model, the management board, the Vorstand, is completely separate in law from the Aufsichtsrat, the upper supervisory board. Common membership is not allowed by law. The power of the supervisory board in the German model is that they can hire, monitor, supervise, hence the name, and fire the members of the management board. And very interestingly, in the German model, moreover, because of the German tradition of co-determination, that is, they broadly see large companies as though they were a sort of partnership between capital on the one hand and labour on the other hand. Under the principles of co-determination, the supervisory board in the German model is required to be made up half of employee, worker directors, and half of directors representing the shareholders. That is one of the reasons why, if you remember in the previous lecture, I said the European Union's proposal, the draft fifth directive, for a two-tier board to be used throughout the companies in the European Union was strongly resisted in Great Britain, where of course they not only do not have, not want, worker representatives on the board, they also believe that the unitary board with both executive and non-executive directors working together was a more appropriate governance model. Let me say at this stage, just in passing, that the supervisory board model in Germany is somewhat different from the so-called supervisory board model that has been adopted by the CSRC, China Securities Regulatory Commission, in Beijing for the governance of large listed companies in mainland China. Although the phrase supervisory board is used there, and although the supervisory board has worker representatives, the proportion is not determined by the regulations, and moreover, the supervisory board, unlike the German model, where the supervisory board has the power to hire and fire the members of the management board, in the Chinese model, the supervisory board is more appropriately described as on the side, responsible for oversight of the management board, but lacking the power to hire and fire its members. That gives us an important supervisory function, but puts a lot more power into the management board. Which brings me, as I move on, having discussed these alternative board structures, to the three main committees that are required by all of the corporate governance codes around the world. Standing committees of the main board, by which I mean they are committees created by the main board with its own set of, each with its own set of objectives and with a mission in perpetuity. Not created ad hoc for a particular purpose, but created as standing committees of the main board.